Okay, everyone, here we go. 起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位点传师一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下，Please be seated. Ready to rock and roll?
Thank you so much. And with moderate apologies for slight technical difficulties, here we go again. Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful iteration of the Sunday Tao Study Group. It is a beautiful, overcast, and rather chilly day in Indianapolis. The polar vortex has decided to pay us a visit for a couple of weeks, and so it's only in the middle 20s right now here in Indy. But you know, it's still a great day. It's a wonderful day to be alive and a wonderful day to come together for this process of understanding and sharing the Tao teachings. I'm going to apologize in advance for my inability to enunciate. I've just had my front teeth replaced and have a small infection in one of my lower ones, and so speaking is a bit of a challenge, but I'll do the best I can. 2 weeks ago, we started out looking at a story from Chuang-Tzu. It comes from the story of great and small, and because it's been a couple of weeks, I want to just read through the story from Chuang-Tzu, his thoughts here, and then we'll pick this back up where we were roughly. Chuang-Tzu says, great knowledge is broad and encompassing. Small knowledge is detailed and meticulous. Great talk is powerful and forceful. Small talk is endless and argumentative. In their sleeping hours, their spirits are restless. In their waking hours, their bodies are agitated. When they deal with others, they get entangled. The entire day, they plot and scheme. Some speak deliberately. Some set traps with words. Some are secretive. Small fears make them apprehensive. Great fears make them panic. When they speak, their words are like arrows shot out, seeking others' weak spots to cause damage. When they keep quiet, it is as if they have sworn an oath, looking for opportunities to achieve victory. When they fail, it is like autumn or winter. We can say that they decline day after day. When they are trapped in this situation, they cannot return to their true nature. When they are obstructed as if bound, we can say that they wither and shrivel. The heart that is nearing death cannot regain life and vitality. Joy, anger, sadness, happiness, worry, regret, change, horror, impetuous, undisciplined, unruly, pretentious, like sound coming out of holes, or fungus growing out of humidity. Day and night they clash before us, yet they do not know the root cause. Enough, enough. Once they understand this, will they then comprehend the principle of life? Without it, I cannot exist. Without me, there is no one to appreciate it. Therefore, I am close to it, but I do not know what governs it. There must be a supreme ruler, but I cannot discern any trace of it. I can believe it exists from its actions, but I cannot see its shape. It has existence, but no physical form. Who is the supreme ruler? Well, okay. We are the supreme ruler, right? I don't know completely concretely if Chuang-Tzu's references to the supreme ruler are along the same general lines as Lao-Tzu's. But in point of fact, I think in this case the meanings are identical, that we are the rulers of what we say and of what we do. And Chuang-Tzu here is speaking about a very common facet of the human condition, if you will. What he's talking about are the differences between those who are open-minded, broad-minded, forward-thinking, if you will, and those who are not, and the effects of those two different mindsets on the lives of the people who embrace them. Okay? We all know of folks that we believe are, if you will, uh, broad-minded, forward-thinking. Most of us do our very best to fall into that category, right? The difference between great and small knowledge, between seeing the whole picture and a very small part of it. Broad-mindedness removes from our lives prejudices and the petty differences that cause us to look at the differences between people instead of the similarities. Small-mindedness causes us to focus on the differences, the things that separate us from our fellow man. And the importance of this in a life of compassion and service to others cannot be overstated. Once we allow ourselves to become the small-minded person, once we become a victim to our own misconceptions and our own prejudices, we open the door right then and there to dehumanize entire classes of people, entire groups of people, entire populations, simply because of a prejudice or a perception, right? In our modern society, probably the single best example of that is in the perception of what's beautiful. Whenever you turn on your TV, open up a magazine, look at a billboard, walk into a restaurant or a store, or even just down the street, we are continually bombarded with images of what's supposed to be beautiful. 99% Photoshop and 2% reality. Particularly when it comes to women. And it's so unfair because nobody can achieve the standard of beauty that's presented in the printed media, the stuff that assails us from the front of our televisions and the billboards and the magazines and the advertisements. It's impossible to achieve. The male image of beauty is equally as unattainable, and yet we're leading entire generations of young men and women to believe that that is an attainable and worthwhile goal to strive for. And what that does is that it causes people to look at those who do not at least ascribe to that image of beauty with a large degree of derision. Folks who are bigger, those who may be more or less obese, those who do not have the perfect measurement of facial ratios and shoulder to hip ratios and the other things that science measures to make the advertisements work are thought of as ugly. Lao Tzu says when beauty is known, then ugliness arises, right? But what really is beautiful, what really is ugliness, I found in my experience that real beauty shines from the inside out of a person, male and female both. And that the countenance, the physical demeanor, the presence of that person in front of me is shaped by their thought processes, beliefs, values, and thoughts, such that their body takes on the peerage of their mindset. I'm astounded both at the incredible beauty that I see coming out from inside of people and the incredible ugliness that I see come out from the insides of people. Those who are bereft of joy and contentment, those who feel that the world owes them a living or an existence or anything else, those who feel that they've been shortchanged or slighted or in some other way left out of the will of prosperity and a good life on this earth, tend to exemplify those thoughts in the way that they look. Likewise, those who are content with their lot in life, those who understand the transient nature of stuff, those who understand real compassion and the spiritual nature of the human being, radiate a beauty that is impossible to replicate with makeup and Photoshop. And what Chuang's is talking about here isn't just the outward appearance, but the internal effects of either being that broad-minded person or that small-minded person. And the small-minded, Chuangzi says that they have restless spirits and agitated bodies. Why is that, do you suppose? Well, stop and think about it for a bit. If we feel in some way that we've been slighted at life, if we feel unfulfilled, discontented, unhappy, like we've been cheated out of something, if we're worried about what we said or who we told what to, our spirits will indeed be restless. If we're continually rumor mongering and spreading gossip about others, particularly if those people are in close enough proximity to hear what it was we said about them, that can present itself as a pretty substantial problem. And it all causes anxiety. It causes the mind to be unquiet, the spirit to be agitated, to be restless. And it causes those who are in that trap to try and elevate themselves by stepping on the backs of others. When the mind and the spirit are disquieted, when there is no tranquility, where there is no peace, then the body reflects the condition of the mind and the spirit. The body and mind and spirit travel as a unit. They don't go anywhere separate from one another except in very rare cases. And so generally speaking, the condition of the mind and the spirit will be evidenced in the body of the person who holds those thoughts and beliefs. If the person's nervous and anxious, if they're involved in rumor mongering and gossip, if they're continually debating, continually trying to be right, continually trying to be on top of everyone else, then their bodies are going to reflect that agitation. Their blood pressure is going to be higher. Their heart rate's going to be higher. They're going to be continually somewhere between the adrenal response of excessive stress and the lethargy of depression. And none of those things are healthy. Folks who are stuck in that mindset over a period of years are very frequently sick. Real, honest to goodness, physically ill, because what our mind accepts as reality, it will inflict on our bodies. That's the price we pay for that absence of tranquility, the absence of contentedness. And so the power of our words in this case, the power of our thoughts, the power of what we believe, how we perceive the world, how we perceive other people, takes on a much greater meaning. What we believe we are, we become. Not through some magical trick or some kind of spiritual hocus pocus, but very simply because our minds will direct us down the path of the things that we hold most dear, right or wrong, either one. And our words, driven by our thoughts and our motivations, will impact those around us. Whether that impact is positive or negative is completely up to us. Chuangzi speaks of a small-minded person's reaction to failure as being like autumn and winter, the seasons of desolation for those of you who are in a place where winter is really cold and devoid of greenery, pretty much, where the plant life dies off for the winter and doesn't return to the spring. That first few months when it starts to get really cold here, I'm always surprised by how desolate some of the really beautiful areas around here are when the leaves fall down off the trees and the grasses die off and the flowers don't bloom anymore. And for folks who are trapped in that small-minded and misunderstanding frame of mind, there's no end to that desolation. There's no promise of a coming spring. There only is that autumn and that winter, to the point where Chuang-Tzu says they cannot return to their true nature. Well, what's the true nature we're returning to? It's a true nature of joy and peace, of tranquility in the mind and the spirit, of knowledge that we are more than just that physical presence sitting on the couch, to a contented and fulfilled life that no matter where we are in the strata of society, we can be relatively happy with as we work to improve our condition. For one who is continually in the depths of small-mindedness, bigotry, prejudice, and hatred, those things do not exist. One cannot return to the Buddha nature while one's busy degrading everything and everybody around them. At some point, there has to be a quantum shift in thinking, a much larger worldview, if you will. And so Chuang-Tzu talks about these people as being trapped, bound as if trapped or obstructed. He talks about the withering and shriveling of the heart and spirit of those who are stuck in that mindset. He says the consequence of that mindset is that heart near death cannot regain life and vitality. That's the consequence for refusing to see things the way they really are, for being a willing victim of the illusions of power and ownership and control. And the longer one goes stuck in that mindset, the deeper we get into that pit of quicksand, until eventually one day we cannot see any way out. And when that happens, that truly is a heart nearing death. The spiritual light inside of that person will go out one day, at least in this life. And then there's absolutely no hope for joy or contentment or peace. Only the internal turmoil and conflict brought about by our own actions. Chuang-Tzu says they clash day in and day out. It's the clashing of shield against shield, of weapon against weapon, words against words. It's the emotional roller coaster of living in a mindset that places value on the transient and impermanent and ignores the spiritual and the correct. It is the absence, the abandonment of order and restraint and moderation. It shows itself as a continuing ignorance of the higher truth, the better set of answers such as we find here. While I'm speaking to you of what I observe and of my opinions, okay, and while there are other answers out there that many of you may find appealing and useful to you, I will say that as far as me and my life goes, I have found these teachings to be completely transformative in this regard, in helping me to recognize where I myself have been a little small-minded from time to time, trapped in my own illusions of power and ownership and control. And those things are important. They've helped me become a much happier, much freer person. And then Chuangzi goes on to say that there's this principle of life that's resultant from becoming the broader-minded person as opposed to the smaller-minded person, and asks, even if all of this other stuff went away, would they understand this principle of life? What's the principle of life? What is it he's talking about? It must be something pretty important, because Chuangzi says he cannot exist without it, that others do not appreciate it, and that he doesn't understand what governs this supreme principle. I don't know if this is a well-defined principle or not. I don't know if he meant for those who read his story here to determine for themselves what this principle of life is. I'm going to surmise, in my case in particular anyway, that principle of life is one of gaining all of the information possible to have the widest worldview possible, and to be a worldview that is inclusive and not exclusive, a view that is more compassionate than divisive, a worldview that's not settled on that which is transient and impermanent, but rather a view that is spiritual and enduring, the path of the Tao itself, the thing that I'm trying to make myself one with. And heaven knows I'm nowhere close to that just yet. But every day I walk down this path, I hope I get a little closer, and that one day, perhaps after I die, that all of that truth will be revealed, that I'll actually be able to see the whole picture. And I'd like to think that the little bit of the picture I see while I'm here is closer to what it should be than what it used to be. I think by engaging in this very process, we are all putting that divine principle of life to work. And that makes it very simple for me to understand why Chuangzi says he cannot exist without it. I'm no longer trapped in the anxieties and worries and fears of small-minded pettiness, rumor-mongering, gossiping, debating, arguing, none of it. I don't really spend a lot of time agonizing over whether or not I'm going to have enough money or more money or better stuff or more stuff. Those things will pretty much take care of themselves as I set myself on the right and proper spiritual path of the Tao and learn to master the teachings one by one. It is that divine principle of life that sets our feet on that path, or at least one of the things it does, that helps us to evolve spiritually and mentally both, to bring us to that place where we should be instead of where we may be standing. Those in a terribly small-minded perspective cannot appreciate the true value of those teachings. They can't. It's beyond their ability to perceive. I believe that's why Master William tells me that there are those with the karmic affinity for these teachings and those who do not have that affinity. I think, I asked him once, while I was still pretty naive, why I didn't just have people lined up out my front door to the street, to learn what I'd discovered here. And he said, sometimes all you can do is plant a seed. You don't know where that seed may grow, how big that tree may get. And that's not your job. You plant the seed. That's a Mr. Bill's paraphrased version, but it's very close to what he said. And over the years, I've learned the truth of that statement. Lao Tzu says that when the superior person hears of the Tao, they practice it every day, they use it, they make it a part of their lives. When an average person hears of the Tao, sometimes they use it in practice, sometimes they don't. When the lower person hears of the Tao, they laugh out loud at it. He says if they did not laugh out loud, it would not be the Tao. This is that statement. There are those who can realize the value of the teachings, and there are those who cannot. For those who cannot realize the value of the teachings, there's little hope of embracing the path and walking the path until they understand the value of the teachings. So how do we recognize the form of the Supreme Ruler? The ruler without shape? Look in the mirror and then look deeper than the face, deeper than the eyes. Look down to the true self, the Buddha nature, that part of us that transcends death, the part of us that we can't really explain, that part of us that is eternally connected to the Tao. And I think then we can see the Supreme Ruler. Hopefully this has been a bit helpful to kind of tie it up. Ignorance and small-mindedness and prejudice, unrestrained emotions and all that sort of thing, those things give rise to just a whole plethora of problems in our relationships, no matter who the relationship's with. And the issues that we can invite into our lives as a result of that ignorance and small-mindedness, that's enough to keep us from sleeping at night. It's enough to cause us some significant anxiety. It's enough to create the restless spirit that Chuangzi references. And by choosing to continue down that path of small-mindedness and ignorance, then we sacrifice our ability to reach our true nature. To the extent that we refuse to see the bigger picture, we condemn ourselves to being unable to ever find it. Perhaps more important even than that, though, is that our words and our thoughts have power. And therefore, it's important for us to consider what we're about to say to another person in light of the likely impact that our words may have on them. And this is a topic that Lao Tzu speaks about frequently, and one that we discuss here fairly often, about making sure that the tongue isn't an axe or a sword or something else that's pointy and dangerous, but rather that our words are words that lift people up and that make our situation and theirs better. So we should probably choose to hang on to that principle of life that Chuangzi speaks of, to do our very best to restrain our extreme emotions and moderate our egos, to give up our small-minded ideas and our prejudices and bigotry, wherever we can do that. I don't know that that's an easy thing to do. I know it isn't a short-term thing. I think like most of the other teachings of the Tao, it is a day-by-day process, something that we get out of bed every morning and do. And we do it every day to the best of our ability, so that someday perhaps we'll actually master these teachings and achieve real understanding and real peace. Thank you all very much. It's always a joy to be able to share with you.
Bill, thank you for that talk. When you mentioned in the early part of your talk about the incredible beauty and also equally incredible ugliness that can come out of people, that reminds me that today in our discussion of verse 30 of the Tao Te Ching, a little bit later on during my segment, I'll be talking specifically about that the metaphor that Lao Tzu will be using to talk about the ugliness in particular is interesting. It's he compares it to you having an army that's camped out, within yourself, in your heart, meaning that, the army that has set up camp is ready to do battle, and this is so this is metaphorical of someone who was getting ready to confront, to criticize, to attack other people, ready for contention, in other words. So I'll provide a more detailed discussion of that later on, but your talk today on anger management is very timely because of that.
Another one of those little synergies.
I guess. And also I want to mention, Bill talks quite a bit about Master William here at the temple, and the two of them have worked very closely together. Master William is not here. He is with the Chinese-speaking class right now, but I know what he would say. He will make it a point to tell everyone that he himself has come a long way in Dao cultivation, that he himself has learned a lot over the years. And this is because when he became an ordained master, it was on the basis of him helping with the administration of little details, keeping the lights on at the temple, as opposed to being in a position to teach great wisdom to everyone. He knew quite well that he also had quite a bit to cultivate, just like the rest of us. So he wasn't, he would certainly not be someone who is looking to be deified as a very wise teacher. But just like myself, just like Bill, he's someone who is studying the Tao and sharing understanding with the rest of all of our fellow travelers. That is the idea.